Hello, my drunken Buddhas. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the 15 principles of healing. So these are going to be these core concepts and ideas and things that are most useful to bring to the table when it comes to healing emotional wounds, trauma, painful beliefs, dealing with resistance and all these kinds of things. So firstly, what does it mean to heal? Well, heal, the word actually comes from the word wholeness. So it was in the original Proto-Indo-European, it was the word kailo, which meant whole, with that language being the one that all the other European languages then stemmed from. So that's where it comes from, this idea of wholeness. And so that's what we're trying to do when we're healing. We're trying to make ourselves whole. So in what way are we not whole? Well, as we go through life, experiences come up that we don't like, that we can't handle, that we don't have the support to be able to manage, or that experiences come through us that other people don't like and force us to suppress. You can't get angry or burst out crying in the middle of school, for example. They tell you to shut up, basically. And what happens, there's also another category of things where certain beliefs or certain things come up in us which we don't want to acknowledge or look at. We might think we're a really wonderful, good, loving, kind person, and hatred comes up, a thought of hatred. That's something we sort of resist and push down as well. So these different categories of things we can't manage or things we don't want to look at, get pushed down, pushed away into the deepest, darkest recesses of our body and mind, into the dungeons of our being. And they are hidden from us. We hide them from ourselves. Sometimes our mind even hides them before we even know they're there, right? So what we have is we have all these different feelings and beliefs, all these different parts of ourselves that are fragmented, orphaned, separate, and that have not been integrated into the whole. And this is what is fragmented within us. This is what is not whole. Our being is constructed of all these different parts, many of which are hidden and unconscious. And this actually turns out it causes a lot of suffering because all these different parts are still active in the background, and they're causing a lot of conflict between each other. There's maybe a part of you that wants to be super kind, or a part of you that wants to hate and be violent to people, and they're just banging against each other. And this is so painful. This is why we need coping mechanisms like addictions and so on, because there's all these fragmented parts sort of warring underneath the surface and occasionally bursting through in sort of volcanic eruptions of emotion and strange behaviors and things. So this is what we're talking about. What are the principles that can help us reintegrate these separate orphaned parts, which is the healing journey. Now, these principles are very, very helpful if you want to heal from something. If you can include as many of them as possible, you're going to be doing yourself a massive favor. That said, you can't force anything, you can't make anything heal. Not everyone can heal from everything. It's just not possible. A lot of healing is possible, but it's not guaranteed, is what I'm trying to say here. So these are just sort of helpful attributes or concepts you can bring to the table. Number one, awareness. So the actual healing agent, the healing factor in life is actually your own awareness, your own attention, that simple fact that you're aware of your own experience. You can turn your attention onto thoughts, you can turn your attention onto feelings, you can turn your attention onto sensations, onto the colors, the sounds. You can put your attention in all these different places. And it turns out that this awareness, this attention, has transformative healing properties. So if you actually put your attention on thoughts and feelings, they will change. It tends to be transformative. And we don't notice this normally because we never bother to actually pause and see what happens if we just look at something. Just look at a thought. Just be with a feeling, putting your awareness on it. But that's actually what allows an emotion to unravel. Or if you're just putting your feeling in the body, that's what gives space for these deeper unconscious parts to come to the surface. If you put your attention on a thought, other thoughts start to come back up from the unconscious related to it. And then as you keep staying with it, those thoughts can sometimes, you can notice that it's just a memory, it's just some words, some images, and it can start to fade. So in this way, your awareness is the actual causal healing agent, and the other factors that I'm going to list are all in service of bringing things up forward into your awareness in such a way that it can transform them. But the awareness is the primary thing. Number 2, it's a bottom-up, body-based process. So you can't heal by thinking about things. You can't think about problems you have in life to heal them. If you're thinking about like the addictions you have or whatever, you're not healing what's underneath it. But getting lost in the mind is actually a defense mechanism. It's actually a way that the mind stops us from getting into these orphaned parts, these hidden dungeons I was sort of talking about, right? Instead, the healing really happens in the body. That's where the wounds are. That's where, you know, these incredibly overwhelming experiences occur that we can't handle, that we have to push down. And it's really the repressed anger or the shame, the sadness. All that stuff is just held in the muscles, tissues and fascia and nerves of your body. And it's there that you need to turn your awareness, because those are the things that need to be transformed. Just thinking about things has no transformative capacity, or very little. Number 3, safety. So safety is the sort of the precondition of some of these parts coming up to the surface into awareness, because it felt, you know, we had to push these things down because we felt so unsafe. So if we feel even more unsafe, it's the whole nervous system just clams up, tightens up even more. Nothing's going to come up. So we need to be with someone we trust, say, if we're being helped or supported by someone. We need to have some sense of safety in our experience, even if it's just having your feet on the ground, as, you know, giving you a sense of stability, or knowing you've got someone with you, or various kinds of resourcing, which I talk about in other videos, is a good way of getting safety. When there's some element of safety in your experience, then those difficult experiences can come to the surface to be healed. So that's really, really critical. Without that, nothing's going to move anywhere. And many people have gone through their entire lives without ever feeling safe at all, or not knowing what that even means. And so their body is going to respond, will only start responding after it's just really been drip-fed bits of safety over quite a long period of time. So this is really, really crucial. Number 4 is sort of a counter to that, is readiness. So at the same time as emphasizing safety, what we're doing here is not safe per se. We're going into feelings that feel unsafe, right? Difficult feelings, difficult experiences, powerful nervous system responses. And this doesn't feel comfortable, it doesn't particularly feel safe. And there is a certain degree of readiness that is required to be able to go into these things. And willingness and courage is kind of what I'm saying as well. To go back into to move towards traumatic memories and things, you know, shame in the system, things we know that are just very painful. And that's why actually weirdly safety and this kind of readiness, courage actually kind of go together, because you almost have one foot in safety and then one foot in that readiness to step into the pain, the unknown, the uncertain, and know that we've got a bit of support that we can return to if we start getting a bit overwhelmed, right? So you can start moving from safety into unsafety and then back again. And just building your capacity to be with really, really difficult experiences. Increase your capacity to bring those orphan parts up into awareness with that transformative energy that it has. Number 5 is pace. So everyone will have their own pace at which they can process and heal. And it's very important to not go too fast and not go too slow really either. Otherwise you can kind of lose momentum if you're going too slow. If you're going too fast, you'll overwhelm yourself. And you'll end up, you know, re-traumatizing yourself, causing more harm than good, and that, you know, will be really demotivating and could cause you to sort of give up altogether on the healing path, which is not what we want. So being able to attune to what the right pace for you is really key. So you don't want to be accidentally shying away from things. It's like, it's you know, not time yet, just constantly putting it off. But you don't want to be pushing yourself too hard either. Number 6 is self-trust. This is kind of related to pace. Self-trust is the ability to discern what is actually best for you, but really feeling that really authentically and genuinely, because it's very easy to be swayed by all the people with all their different advice and things, you know, these fucking wankers on YouTube just being like, I know everything about healing, look at me. You know, and put what they say against the sounding board of your own experience. You ask your own body if you feel like what they're saying, you know, resonates. Take what resonates with you, and sort of ditch the rest. Right? It's all about, like, say no to the gurus, the influencers, all this kind of stuff, the teachers. You know, you can definitely learn from other people. 100%. I've learned from so many people, so much. It's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. All the stuff that I've learned from these amazing people. But at the end of the day, I still need to test it all against my own experience, and I'm still more and more coming into my own self-trust and just my own authority in this stuff. And it's so helpful, because it just allows you to discern what you actually need, not what like you kind of think you should need based on what other people are saying. Number 7, this is a biggie, skill. So a lot of people in the spiritual healing communities, and they talk about all sorts of stuff, of ways of healing, and they really overlook this one. Just having skill in how to use your awareness to bring things up from the unconscious into the conscious, how to know how to work with it, how to know how to be with it, how to work with resistance, how to ask the right questions to reveal more, how to judge whether your nervous system is getting a bit too hot or whether you're going more into, it's getting a bit too cold, a bit numb, what to do in those different states, right? How the nervous system works, how thoughts and emotions work, what they're trying to do. All this kind of stuff, you know, different techniques, practices, inquiries. This is all skill-based things which are absolutely indispensable. And it's, you know, it takes years to build this stuff up. It's a lifelong process, really. But people often overlook that one. So, you know, finding the right people who can teach you the right skills is critical. Number 8, having the right conceptual framework. So whilst I said this is all body-based stuff, it's really helpful to have a bit of an understanding of how reality kind of operates in this domain, so that you can understand what's happening in your system. So this could be from a nervous system perspective, that you have a basic understanding of how the nervous system works, the 3 states of the nervous system, how trauma responses work, you know, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That can really help you make sense of why certain experiences are coming up. So for example, if I'm working with someone, often they might feel a lot of numbness or a freeze response. And I know that freeze response, underneath that is always like anger or fear, right, underneath the freeze. And so what I'm helping them to work with the freeze and numbness in such a way, and then when suddenly the anger bursts through, for example, I know that's sort of I know why that's happening. It's because the freeze was containing the anger and repressing it, because they, you know, the client for whatever reason wasn't able to express that when they were small. And so I'm sort of on the lookout for these kinds of things, because I know I have a rough conceptual understanding of how it should be operating. This could include the fact, for example, that all your experience is made out of words, images, and sensations. This kind of conceptual understanding is really, really helpful for grasping that, you know, if you're being sucked into some narrative of like, oh, I'm not good enough, and I'm so worried about this thing I've got to do later on today, that actually what's only ever happening is some combination of words, images, and sensations. And then having skills to work with these. This is all super helpful stuff. So get some skills. Number 9 is your container or environment. So the container is almost like a smaller version of the environment. You could call the container is like how you're being held when you're doing healing work. So the container is that space that's being held for you by a facilitator, or by, if you're on a retreat, or if you're by yourself, just sort of how you're holding the space for yourself almost, you know, making sure that you've got time afterwards, you've got space, you've got whatever you need. Because the nervous system is like, heals best when you're in this sort of, they call it the window of tolerance in the middle. Your nervous system is not too activated, not too numbed out, and you're in this window of tolerance, and you want to set up your container, your environment in such a way that you're able to access that. An example of, it's easiest to explain by the contrary example. Imagine if you were being supported or having the space held by someone who really triggered, who you hated, you found you were really afraid of. If they were trying to help you to heal, you know, your entire nervous system. Imagine if it was Vladimir Putin's trying to hold space for you or whatever, like, and you're trying to do healing work. It's like, whoosh, so you wouldn't feel comfortable around him. The nervous system would clam up somewhat. You know what I mean? that's the environment of a container that's not appropriate. Whereas if it's someone you really, really trust, you get along with well, it's like, you can surrender into whatever's going to happen much more easily. The environment side of things is much more about kind of getting your life arranged in such a way that you have a bit of space to heal. So if you're in a relationship where you're finding it really, really difficult and you're getting triggered a lot, maybe there's some abuse of some kind, that's going to be very, very difficult to actually heal in that place. And so a first step might be seeing what you can do to create a little more space, a little more freedom in your life. Easier said than done, I appreciate, but it's a healing factor, so it's on the list. It's very, very important. Brings us on to number 10. This is the support. This is facilitators, friends, allies, the community. This is a really critical one. Having people around you, whether it's a facilitator you have, whether it's friends, whether it's some kind of spiritual healing community, even a Facebook group where you can share your experiences. This really helps to validate what you're going through. When you're talking to other people and sharing, it helps bring these things to light and make it feel like it's okay and normal. Their presence can be reassuring, can help regulate your own nervous system, and there's a million ways this can happen. And this is really, really critical. And there are more people out there than you'd think, right? There are some really amazing people out there, and there are plenty of communities, more than you would imagine, where there's people doing this kind of work. So if you want it, and you look for it, that kind of support is available, particularly in the days of the internet. Number 11 is open-mindedness. This is a subtle one. So open-mindedness is this idea that we are willing to try new things, new ways of thinking, feeling, approaching, because humans actually have a robotic aspect to them, particularly in how we view the world and how we sort of move through it. When we find something that kind of works, we tend to stick with it. Even if in the long run it really doesn't work, starts to get very dysfunctional, we kind of stick with it. We stay very, very rigid in how we view the world and how we move through it. And in order to heal, you almost always need to bring in some fresh impetus, some fresh input from somewhere. That's a new teacher or someone, or it's a new idea, a new group of people, a new approach, a new practice. You need to put some fresh data into the machine so it can start changing how it's operating. And you don't know exactly what's going to be needed or what that might be. So again, it's helpful to stay really open-minded to all kinds of different options, and just use the body, use your gut to kind of feel into what's best, trusting yourself, feeling into the different different possibilities, and just going with the gut as to what might be helpful. I wouldn't think about it too much. The mind tends to lie a little bit. Where are we? 12. Okay, so look after the body is number 12. So I've said this is a somatic process, and looking after the body is a really helpful support. So if you're trying to heal and you're eating loads of junk food, not doing any exercise, that's totally fine. No judgment from me. You're more than welcome to do that. It probably will hinder the healing process, because when your body should be focused on integrating, a healing experience, it then has to focus on, recovering from eating, unhealthy food or whatever, or just getting you through the day. Now, this is easier said than done, because I appreciate when you are carrying a lot of emotional stuff, emotional pain, that people use like food, or they find it very difficult to exercise because they're depressed. They use it to get through that. So there is a bit of a catch-22 here, in that you kind of have to heal to be able to look after your body, to be able to heal to be able to look after your body. But if you can find that little gap at the beginning where you can just give your body a little bit of relief, a little exercise, a little bit of self-care, self-soothing, that brings a little more space for healing and a little more space for looking after yourself, it kind of tends to snowball over time. But it is a tricky one, I will admit. People say it too glibly. Oh, just look after yourself. Like, it's actually very, very difficult. Like the reason why we don't look after ourselves goes very, very, very deep. There's a lot of shame or a lot of pain that we're using unhealthy coping mechanisms for. It's a real tricky one. So you're not alone if you find that one very difficult. Number 13, integration. So this is sort of the flip side to the actual practices themselves. So you can go into your body and use your awareness and your tools and your skill to bring up different parts, process them and integrate them. But then afterwards, you do actually need the space and time to integrate those changes. It's like the body and mind just need space just to recalibrate. And that's just a very important part of the healing process that, again, sometimes gets overlooked. Most helpfully, this is just simply giving your space to do not very much, maybe reflect a little bit, so going for a walk, just having a day off where you chill without doing too much like super unhealthy stuff. So don't just chill and lie around smoking weed, playing computer games. That's fine if you want to, but you're not going to integrate as much as if you just hang out with a friend, go for a coffee, maybe write a bit in your journal about what you've learned, something like that. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just giving yourself space. Number 14, this is question and discern, spot the hidden. So as I said at the beginning, a lot of this stuff is very unconscious, and there are many, many, many clever psychological defense mechanisms and layers of resistance which will prevent us from really digging down into the depths. And a questioning, inquiring, discerning mind is very helpful to be able to spot that, to notice the resistances, to notice when your mind is playing tricks on you. And this is a tricky skill, but it's the easiest way. Is probably I learned it through sort of working with other people, and they would help guide me into noticing all the little tricks my mind was playing and all the different layers of resistance. And it comes through just experience as well, as you keep diving into the body and looking at the feelings and thoughts that you encounter there. You keep noticing patterns in the way your body and mind resist. Suddenly thoughts of, I used to be doing inquiry, and the thoughts of chocolate would just come up suddenly. It's like, I just noticed again and again, as soon as I was about to go into something painful, this thought of chocolate would come up. Or how there would be just subtle tensions that were resisting going into some big emotion. Or I'd be feeling a lot of anger, and there would just be this subtle tension. It would just stop me from going into the anger, from expressing and embodying the anger. And it's just, you've got to carefully notice these subtle aspects of your experience that are just protecting you. They're trying to do their best to protect you, but they're holding back these experiences they've deemed to be unsafe. And you really got to be very, very questioning. And just the golden rule is this: is if anything seems completely solid and real, if there's some belief you had, it's like, oh, I can't do that. I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm not smart enough. There's any position the mind is creating that feels completely solid. Oh, I can't express my anger. No one will ever love me. I'll never earn enough money. Any of these things, that's always a golden sign, if it feels completely real, that's where you need to look. That's where you need to question and poke and prod in that area. Because none of these mind-created manifestations are ultimately real. They are all made only of words, images, and sensations, and can be deconstructed. Number 15 is persistence. So I've talked about a lot of different things here. As you might be able to tell, it's not an overnight job to be able to incorporate all these different parts. It's a lifelong thing. It's basically a lifestyle that you adopt of turning towards these different parts with skill and awareness, because you recognize that it's just the most loving thing to do for yourself, that it's the path that leads to the least suffering, and it's ultimately totally worth it. That's been my experience. That it's not because I do this work not because I feel like I should or I have to. I mean, sometimes I do feel that a little bit, but ultimately it's because I know it's just what's best for me. I've just seen it 100,000 times that when I do the work, it's just there's less suffering, there's more joy, there's more peace, and at a certain point the penny just drops. And so I have that motivation for that, to persist in it, because I know it's simply the only option. It's like kind of like washing up or cleaning up after yourself. It's like you don't do it because you do it just because you recognize it just contributes to just like a good life. If your way you're living is clean, it just kind of works. It just kind of works. It's the same kind of thing, and there's a lot more. There's even more joy in this. When you wash up, you get a clean kitchen or whatever. That's fine. This is like an infinite clean kitchen. This is like about 100,000 clean kitchens worth of joy. Okay, and then I got a bonus one for you. The bonus principle is love. So this is what we're really doing here. Awareness. When I talked about your awareness at the beginning, that's actually synonymous with love. When we're really bringing our awareness to some part of ourselves, and we're really just holding it, then we're just accepting it unconditionally as it is, which is love. And we're loving these pains to death. And it's ultimately out of love for ourselves that we embark on it in the first place, because we recognize that we need to do something to help ourselves. And so that's the alpha and the omega of all this stuff is love. I think that's it for today. If you want a hand with any of this stuff, give me a shout. I help people. I work with them one-on-one to help them, guide them through this kind of stuff, to help them heal their wounds and so on and so forth. I have various skills and techniques and a lot of experience in doing this for myself and with others. And so just feel free to reach out or go on my website. All the links are below. Peace out. Bye.